flushing the plants before harvest. Now, there have been some studies that came out in regards to flushing the plants before harvest, whether or not it's beneficial. I've talked to many guests in the past. I like to bring this question up because each person kind of has their own little tidbits on it, little insight on it. And so I wanted to ask you this. Are there any benefits to flushing your plants before harvesting it?
Thus far, there's been a couple studies out about it. And, I think the only true solid takeaway we can have is that if you stop fertilizing 2 weeks prior to harvest, there's no differences in what's been tested so far. And so that really is terpenes, cannabinoids, yield, with, I believe Mike from Clemson, his work was showing that if you go further than 2 weeks of fertilizer restriction, then you're going to start losing some yield, which makes sense. But right at that 2 week mark, you're not losing yield and you're not losing any sort of potency. So what that tells me is stop wasting your fertilizer, and you're not having any negative from doing it. So why do it? But again, theory, and again, something that this year we're going to get done is looking at what else is happening during that flushing process. When you flush, you see color change, you see, depending on how hard and intense your flush is, you'll see faster ripening. And so it's my theory that is in fact what's happening is you're cutting off the nutrients. A lot of times you're lowering the temperature so the plant is being pushed into maturation faster than it would be if it were still getting all the nitrogen and everything that would be encouraging it to stay grow. I say vegetatively, but I don't mean it being in this vegetative form. I just mean in bulk. You're not pushing that nitrogen for excess growth. The plant thinks it's fall. They think, oh no, it's time to close up shop and protect these seeds. So we need to ripen. So I suspect that flushing does help to push maturation that then changes those carbohydrates from being starches to sugars. I also think there's some play in that as well, the starch to sugar conversion in those, probably first 5 days or so of drying, because it is still active. It's difficult to say when a plant is dead because it depends on how, it all depends on how much water's in it ultimately. Is this thing alive or not due to the water in it, due to the water supporting some of the enzymatic activities that can happen. So I would expect, those last few weeks of growing and then those first few weeks first couple of weeks of drying to really be when those changes are happening. And like I said, it's been a couple-year mission trying to get the right testing available for this plant specifically to be able to check that.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Ever since that study came out by RX Green Technologies back in 2020 in regards, it really showed no difference between the two. I actually made a video on it and I talked about how, the same viewpoint as you is like, well, you can save money on fertilizer. Why feed the plant up until the end if it's not doing anything differently for you? The responses I got off of that was hilarious. But now it seems like the biggest argument is the starch to sugar conversion. And right now we just don't have the data to back that up. And it's interesting that that's the route that you're trying to go to actively research and see if there is anything there. So looking forward to seeing what comes out of there in the future.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrow at 15 to save on any of their products.